This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast.
What is that stuff? The hell is that?
It's oil.
It sure as hell is.
Holy shit! There really is oil under this graveyard. The ground is dripping with it.
Well, I'll be damned.
That you can count on. Remember one thing, gentlemen. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And today's been a real bitch.
Oh, shit!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. I'm Alan Katz.
And I'm Gil Adler.
Before we go on, if you're watching or listening to this podcast on our YouTube channel, please remember to hit the like button if you like, and even better, please subscribe. And if you're going to be in Los Angeles this September 30th and October 1st, please join us at this year's Terror Spectacular HorrorCon LA 2023, happening at the Los Angeles Convention Center from noon to 7 p.m. on September 30th and October 1st. Gil and I will be doing a bunch of panels about Tales from the Crypt, and we'll be signing autographs and snapping photos. Come join us and all the other celebrities. That's HorrorCon LA September 30th and October 1st from noon till 7 at the LA Convention Center. Our guest today, Paul ABASCAL, started in the business as a much sought-after hairstylist. Kind of like George in the movie Shampoo.
And they're so great looking, you know, I'm doing their hair and they feel great and they smell great. That's it. It makes my day. I mean, it makes me feel like I'm going to live forever.
And then found his way into directing. He actually is a really, really talented director. Really, the first serious episodic or dramatic work he did was an episode of Tales from the Crypt, the Oils Well That Ends Well episode, and it's terrific. It really is a great episode.
If you haven't seen it, you should try to catch it.
What kind of crap is this? If the guy wants to go to the bathroom, let him go, bitch.
There we go. That's the word I hate. Bitch!
There's some very funny dialogue. Priscilla Presley is really funny in the episode. It's just really well shot. It's a hoot. Paul is a really talented guy. He's very talented hairdresser, and as he describes to him that was like architecture, and he also thought about being an architect.
They can stop screwing me so they can fuck me. Well, I say screw that. Screw them, screw the company.
Excuse me, please, ma'am, but just exactly what kind of business are you in?
Paul's got an interesting story, a really, really interesting story, and he's a really talented director. Someone should hire this guy. Let's call Paul's story from hair to eternity.
Many years ago. How did you get so far behind in the shots at lunchtime today? Oh, wait a second. I'm mistaken. I'm mistaken. That was 30 years ago.
Yeah, I came in on time.
Actually, you did.
With the king's wife.
Indeed.
All I really knew about you, really up until this conversation, was your episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Right.
And a little bit, our paths had not crossed all that much.
Right.
And I gotta say, I always do the deep dive into whoever we're talking to. You're a terrific director.
Oh, thank you very much.
I watching you really just well, first of all, your website's lovely.
Oh, thank you.
And I hardly recommend it if you're looking for a terrific director who is underutilized. Seriously underutilized. Paul ABASCAL is he's a great shooter. I'm your newest fan, man.
Oh boy, I appreciate that.
So at the end of the day, what we all have in common, well, what the three of us have in common, is an episode of Tales from the Crypt, the Oils Well That Ends Well episode. We'll get to that. Mm-hmm. We will get to that. Of course, you and Gil, you also did an episode of The Strip, that fabulous enterprise.
I didn't know you were producer on that, Gil. I forgot.
Gil, have you forgotten?
I've been trying to. No. But that was an interesting show. We shot it in Vegas. We lived in Vegas for 6 months. Made a deal with Caesar's Palace, and we all lived in Caesar's Palace, and it was pretty wild experience living there.
Definitely.
And especially shooting there. I mean, the thing I remember best about that, just really quickly, is one day we're shooting, it's 124 degrees, and I'm not feeling so good. And all of a sudden, one of my guys comes to me and says, "You better get into your trailer. We put the air conditioning on. You may be having some heat stroke." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I got to go to the set." And they got me into the trailer for like 2 hours and left me there and said, "You can't come out."
Yeah, I remember staying in Caesars. They had just opened the tower,
right?
The high tower, and you put me in a beautiful suite with a gym pass. And but every morning I would walk out of my thing, down the thing, and through the casino, and could never find where the driver was picking me up. It didn't matter how many times I did it; I would get lost every day, which I think is the design of the hotel, or they want you to just stay at the machine,
Oh gosh, yes, sure.
6 in the morning, at the slot machines, it was.
Well, I certainly am glad you didn't think it was the design of the production.
Yeah, I think they want everyone in the casino to be like Jack Nicholson's character at the end of The Shining, lost in the maze. Anyway, but again, we'll come to this part of your life.
Let's go back to the very beginning.
Let's start. Well, let's do the Maria thing. Let's start at the very beginning.
Okay. I mean, I'll truncate. This will be the teaser, so it won't be long. But I grew up in Culver City. And had an interest in racing cars and motorcycles and things, which I toyed around with a lot when I was young. And I had a great mentor in my life, a guy by the name of Dale Tolan, who was on the cover of Road and Track and designed engines and things. And he just lived around the corner from me, and he had this garage with every conceivable tool, mills, lathes, everything. And he would build his own, what they called D sports racers. And he had 2 daughters, and he longed for a son. But one of his daughters ended up racing his car. I had the opportunity to do it, but could never. All I had to do was get money for the tires, and I could never raise enough money to do it. But this man taught me how to work with my hands and about engines and drawing to scale. And all of these things that became incredibly important later on in my life, as far as being able to see how things work and knowing what sort of physicality certain things are going to take, what kind of mechanics and that sort of thing. So that was a huge part of my life. And so out of that, I went to high school, and I was a very big surfer. Like I even thought about doing it professionally.
What were your favorite surf spots here in SoCal?
I would surf all of them. So it depended on the swell. It would be El Porto, sometimes Manhattan Beach, Topanga, Leo Carrillo, County Line, a place called Zeros, Point Doom, Malibu. It depended. It got a bit scientific. You'd say, well, it's a south swell, but it's coming from the and the wind is blowing this way. All right, we got to go to Zeros, and
my son surfs, so this is all I know all those names.
Yeah, it's a wonderful sanctuary. Like I sucked at football and basketball and all that, but surfing was like my thing. And I was as into it as I actually got mentioned in the senior class presidential address to the school, which was very flattering to all the surf guys, But from out of high school, I was considering becoming an architect, because I had a lot of interest in buildings and design and things like that. And my sister had gone to beauty school and worked in a salon and was slowly getting into the studio. She was working on like The Price is Right and some of the game shows at CBS and whatnot. So I decided to follow her and go to beauty school. And which was really fun. You know, beauty school is like a party. You know, you got all these, everyone's working on all these old women.
Yeah, that is
shows.
kind of it is kind of a shift away from architecture, although, you know,
Well,
and car engines. I mean, but was it?
Well, it's interesting because hairdressing is very architectural. I mean, when
Yeah.
you're like you're moving volumes of hair and you're designing based around people's faces and hair textures and things. There's tools, hairdressing scissors and curling irons and things. So in a way, it was forming. It was like forming. It was a way architectural exercise, kind of. You know, like, you know, when you think about it, it's, you know, especially if you're doing like stylized women's hairdressing, like for runway shows and things like that, you're moving hair around, you're doing things based on
absolute architecture, no argument.
Yeah.
And really, if you think about the hairstyles coming out of the 60s and
Yeah.
into
Oh,
the
yeah.
early 70s, yeah, the word architecture absolutely comes to mind.
Yeah, it very much is, you know. So I was good in school, and I made friends with other students there, one of whose uncle knew Vidal Sassoon, like was very, very dear friends with Vidal Sassoon. You know who he is, right? He's one of the most famous hairstylists in the world. And so this guy's uncle said, "Oh, my grandson is in beauty school," and Vidal was like, "Oh my God, that's wonderful. Invite him to the salon, let him take the classes that we're teaching our assistants that are, you know, going to become on the floor." And, you know, he got this amazing offer, but my friend didn't have a car, and I did. So I would drive him to Rodeo Drive, and we would park my big, actually, I had a Porsche at the time. I had saved up to buy one, but we would attend these very, very advanced hair cutting classes that they were giving their assistants. The master stylists would hold these classes, and they were like amazing. So we would go twice a week on permission from Vidal. So like we would walk in there.
Now I want to slide back a second. What made that class amazing?
Oh my God. Like at the time, all I cared about was hairdressing. I wanted to be the best hairstylist in the world. So you would see these guys that were legendary within the business, like the artistic directors from Vidal Sassoon, who would travel the world teaching and doing hair shows and things, and the techniques, the way they would hold their body. And you talk about architecture. I mean, these guys were doing crazy hairstyles and their techniques and things. It was like I was drinking it up, you know. So we would walk in there, you know, and get dirty looks at first from all of the stylists and the assistants, like, who the fuck are these guys? You know, these two schmoes that were going in there. And so that went on for about, you know, a year and a half. And by the time I graduated from beauty school, like my skill level was, you know, kind of off the chart compared to the normal guy graduating, you know. Mm-hmm. So I started cutting hair out of my apartment, and occasionally I would do a photo session with like an actress or something. You know, I was kind of working in the salon, working out of my apartment. And my sister had gotten further into the union and whatnot, and she was helping me gather my days to qualify to get into the local 706, which was the union, hairdressing and makeup artists union for the movie business. But the days were very, very difficult to gather, because you had to wait till everybody in the union, in the makeup union, all the hairstylists were working before they would go to the alternate list.
Right. Sure.
Somebody like me. So I would get a few days now and then, but you needed 120 days, which seemed like, I mean, that would take 15 years, I thought it would take. But so a funny thing happened. I went and did a photo shoot with a guy named, I think his name was Douglas Kirkland. He's a famous still photographer. And there was this actress model named Robin Douglas. And it was her and her husband on the cover of Money magazine. and she had long hair. She was quite beautiful. And I did like this sort of partial braid, and, you know, I made her look as good as I could, and she loved it. And it was a one-day gig, and I did it, got paid, and forgot about it. Well, she went on to get cast in Battlestar Galactica, which was a series they were doing out of Universal. And she decided she wanted to wear the same hairstyle I had given her on the cover of the magazine in the series, because there was a lot of action and she had a lot of hair that would fall on her face. But this was a great way of keeping it out of her face. So I don't know anything about this. I don't know she's gotten cast. I mean, it was just a one-day gig, and I stopped thinking about her. And apparently, the hairstylist on the set that was hired to do her hair on the series, who was a union person, couldn't do the style like I had done it. And this girl, Robin, she was a bit aggressive, let's say. She raised hell on the set. Like every day, it was a nightmare. So my phone rings out of the blue, and it's this guy, Nick Marcelino, who ran the makeup department at Universal. They used to be a building, and it was like a standalone building that housed the makeup and hair department on the lot. Sure. And he introduces himself. I don't know who he is. He says, listen, this is Nick Marcelino, the head of makeup at Universal Studios. I'd like you to get in your car and drive down here and see me. And I'm thinking, what the hell is this about, right? So I get there, and he's got this big desk in this stylized office, and he's got these readers on, and he's looking at me over the top of his readers. He says, I have a problem that you can help me solve. And I'm like, okay, still don't know what's going on. He goes, you know Robin Douglas? And I was like, yeah. He says, she's an actress. You've worked with her. You did her hair. And I went, yeah, of course, sure. Yeah, I know her. And she says, well, she's raising hell for everybody around here. So I need you to get in your car, drive to Valencia. Here's the map. And you're going to replace her hairstylist on the series. And I'm like, and this was like a golden ticket, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, yeah.
So I said to him, I go, Nick, I got to tell you, I'm not in the union. I don't have enough days to get. He goes, don't worry about that. I'll fix that. So I get in my car, I drive to Valencia to the set, and I had been on a few sets before, visiting my sister and whatnot, but I was as green as could be. And as I'm walking up, I'm behind the cameras and whatnot, and I see her there in front of the cameras going, brush, mirror, and I see the hairstylist like handing her this thing, and she's like brushing her hair, and she's all pissed off, and I'm like, oh God, So I come walking up, I wait till they cut, whatever, and I said, hey, I got sent down to help you, and she was like hugging me and all that, The first AD comes over and's like, dude, you don't know, thank you for, So I got the rest of my days on that series.
Oh my God.
Which was a miracle.
That's great. That's a great story.
That is hilarious. Wow. Just jump to the head of the line and then some, man.
Yeah. No, it was like
and then free popcorn. And have some popcorn, and you want a refillable soda? Yeah, just a hose right to your seat, man.
Exactly. So I finished the series. I'm like in hog heaven, and I go back to Universal, because that's sort of where you based out of, because sometimes they'd shoot on the lot, sometimes they'd shoot out on location. And so with the series they do 12 episodes, 13 episodes, I don't remember what it was, but so I went back, and Nick Marcelino said, I got another job for you. He goes, you're going to go work with the Smothers Brothers up in San Francisco. And I'm like, yeah, man. So they flew me up to San Francisco, and I meet Dick and Tommy Smothers, who are a lot more fun on stage than they are behind the scenes.
Why is that not shocking?
Yeah. And so Tommy was interested in race cars. He was racing sports cars or something on the side. And at one point, we were having a discussion about a certain kind of Porsche, and I corrected him. I said, well, no, that'd be a 916, because it's got a different such and such, whatever. I don't remember the exact thing. And he kind of looked at me like, you dare to correct me, and I'm just a young spud. So the next thing you know, I'm on a plane back from San Francisco to the makeup department. I got fired, and I was completely devastated. I thought, there goes my career. And Nick Marcelino said, don't worry about it. Go down the hall to the last makeup room and meet Scott Edo. And Scott Edo was a makeup artist, and the two of us, we got assigned this movie, TV movie, with Mary Crosby, that was also shooting in San Francisco. So I met Scott. We hit it off like a house on fire, and we drove up to San Francisco and did this movie. And from then on, he and I became a team. He would do makeup and I would do hair, and we went on to do, a few other movies, and then we kind of got separated. And I went off to do Ferris Bueller's Day Off. No, I went off to do Pretty in Pink, which is a John Hughes movie. John Hughes and I became friendly on the movie. He didn't direct it, but he was around. And then John asked me to do Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Mm-hmm. It was amazing in Chicago, the whole.
You had a Molly Ringwald experience. I hired Molly on an episode of The Outer Limits.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
I enjoyed working with her.
Yeah, she was nice. I mean, the show, the Pretty in Pink was maybe you've seen it. It had a lot of crazy hairstyles.
Oh yeah, really yeah.
Gave me a chance to kind of flex my stuff, and it ended up working really good. It's kind of an iconic movie in the hairdressing world. Yeah, Molly was nice. I met her father.
Why is that?
Well, because the Annie Potts character she's this eccentric, right. Kind of free spirit, and she dresses up differently. She's kind of like these women you might see working in Melrose or something. She was inspired off of one of these sort of 60s hippie / punk rocker, kind of mashup of those. So she was very willing to kind of really go for it on the hairdressing. So there were wigs that one day she's got a beehive, the next time she has what they call the China chop there, and then I had punk rock on her. She was all over the place. So that played really well, and it became kind of a character, really a character embellishment of her.
Can I interject with one question, Paul?
Yes.
All right. All right. So now you're before you got into the movie business, because you're no longer working in the salon side. You were just working exclusively on sets, right? At this point.
Yes.
But all right. Before you made the transition over and you were in the salon world,
right? Did
the movie Shampoo ever pop into your head?
I mean, I saw it, and there would be passages that might relate to that, from time to time. Keep it at that, I was more, to be honest with you, I was totally just laser focused on a career. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to learn all the latest techniques, and I had subscriptions to Vogue magazine. All of the women's magazines would come to my house, and I would make, boards of hairdress, stuff, so I could pull stuff out that was like.
You were not a George.
Yeah, exactly.
You were definitely not a George Warren Beatty's character in Shampoo, but it's really the only thing that I guess I know about that world. And hey, man, there's a whole feature. I guess my question was, did that world in any way, aside from the fact that you had no interest in being a George, was that how the world was in any way?
Yeah, I mean, you would do, like, I would do hair shows where you'd go to like a nightclub, and there would be models there, and you'd get a model and you'd look at her clothes and say, okay, I'm going to do this, so you work on her. And these were attractive women, you're around them, but again, you've got a job to do, and you've got to be professional. But yeah, I mean, there's some George floating out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I feel better knowing that. Thank you. As you were, carry on. All right.
Especially being a heterosexual hairstylist, so. after Pretty in Pink, I went and did Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and John Hughes and Joel Silver were good friends, and John Hughes told Joel Silver about me, and Joel was getting ready to do Lethal Weapon. My partner, who didn't do Ferris Bueller or Pretty in Pink with me, he was off doing something else. He got Predator, I think, with Joel, and he was getting ready to do Lethal Weapon, and John Hughes had told him about me, so I went in, I met with Joel, and he goes, "You got to meet with Donner," and I'm like, "Sure, whatever." And my friend Scott had said, "Listen, Donner doesn't want us to have a makeup trailer. He wants us to work out of the honey wagon." And I'm like, "What? And you let that happen? Come on, dude, that's never gonna," I get all in my friend Scott Edo's face. And he's like, I said, if I was there, this never would have happened. So I go to meet Donner, and he walks in. I'd never met him before. I didn't know who he was. I walk into his office, and the first thing he says, he goes, if I let you do this movie, I want you to know right now, you're not going to have a makeup trailer. This is not a big movie. We're not going to be a bunch of trucks and da-da-da. And I'm like, "Hey, we don't need a makeup trailer. It's fine. No problem." So, you can only imagine that voice, and he's like,
"Oh man. Oh, no, we don't have to."
Yeah. So we get the job, and working out of the makeup trailer, or the honey wagon rather, is ridiculous. So we brought in a bunch of extra boxes and crates and stuff, and made it so, like, if somebody were to come in, open the door, they could look through like a couple of cases and see in. And eventually we got a makeup trailer, and we went to town on Lethal Weapon, which was the most amazing experience. Elle and I hit it off, like, and I mean, we just had so much fun. And Donner, God bless him, I mean, he became this huge mentor in my life. Like, he, his house, what he was interested in, like the way he worked on the set, I mean, I'm just watching him, from afar. And occasionally, I would whisper an idea in his ear, like, "Hey, don't you think such and such, whatever, and he'd say, "Good kid, good idea, kid, good." And he'd go and sort of do it, and I didn't know you're not supposed to do that, what I mean? But he made it so comfortable on the set that, if you were stupid enough like me to go up and say something, you might not get your lights punched out, And
why was he so adamant about not having a makeup trailer? What was that all about? It was just money?
When the movie first came out, he wanted to do it kind of like guerrilla style. Like, he wanted just a very low thumbprint, a very low, just a few trucks, and we're going to go out and kind of steal this movie. That was what was being talked about. And the whole time Joel would be in the background going, "No, that's not." At one point, I was like a stunt man that Mel carries on his back and throws into a doorway when he goes to rescue Danny, So we're like, Donner and Joel built this like family, and that crew went on to do several movies together. And there's this shorthand developed between all of us. It was like, it was Joel, another movie's coming up, Joel's doing this, and I don't know, I think we did like 8 or 10 movies, together. And come Lethal Weapon 2, this is where we're getting into the directing thing for a second. Lethal Weapon 2 comes along, and HBO gives Mel a video camera. And when they first came out, the thing was about the size of a VW. Right. It took like a full-size VHS tape, it was about it was huge. And they said, "Here, Mel, this is a camera, shoot anything behind the scenes at all, and maybe we'll use it in the electronic press kit."
Right. And this was Mel Gibson's unauthorized video diary.
Yeah. So the camera sat around, and I came up with an idea one day. I said, let's do a skit about how you get ready how you prepare to become an actor, in the movie and all that. So it was the unit publicist, Scott, myself, and Mel, and we would sit around and come up with all these skit ideas to do, and they kept getting more and more elaborate. And so we did one. It's one where Mel climbs up the stairs inside of a soundstage, and he's talking as he's going up, and he says, you know, this is where I come. You know, this is where I get into character. I get some introspective up here, get away from everything, and find my character. And we had this ongoing theme where the second AD would call him to come to the set, and we made Mel into like a klutz. So he ends up falling down the stairs. You know, we used this dummy. It was very crude and silly. And then he'd get up and say, you know, oh
God, I hope nobody saw that.
Oh, gee, I hope nobody saw that. And he would walk away. So that became this like through line. And we edited that first one together and showed it to the crew, and Donner just lost it. He loved it. And he loved that Mel was having so much fun doing all these skits and everything. So we're shooting on Warner Lot, and like Dan Aykroyd's on one stage, Chevy Chase is over here, Paul Pee Wee Herman's over there, Michael Keaton's on stage 16. So we'd say, like, hey, maybe we can get one of these guys to be, you know, be in the video. We'll write a little skit around it. So I'd go over to Dan Aykroyd, and he didn't know me, and I'd say, hey, I'm doing this thing with Mel. It's a quick gig. Can you come over to stage 13? And we'd set this up real quick. And it would be Dan Aykroyd. And Dan Aykroyd played a guy that we talked about in the video, industrial espionage within the film industry, and how one film competing for a time slot would try to sabotage another film to get the upper hand for distribution and whatnot. Anyway, so Aykroyd became this kind of like assassin double agent that was kind of over to screw up Mel, you know, so his film would be, you know, released first and stuff. And so Dan Aykroyd came and did this brilliant little skit, took about 5 minutes to do. And then we got Michael Keaton and Pee Wee Herman and everything, and we kept cutting these things together. And Donner just loving it. And then we showed it to HBO, and we blew their minds. And so they did a half-hour special on HBO, which got huge ratings and was the talk of the town. And then come Lethal Weapon 3, NBC offered us a half-hour slot on the network to do another behind the scenes like we did. Now, mind you, this is while I'm hairdressing, you know, so I'm still the hairdresser on the set, but I've got the camera most of the time on my shoulder. And Donner was so awesome. He would like finish shooting a scene and turn to us and say, you guys need anything here? You know, and sometimes we would, and he would just sit there and let us do these stupid little videos while the crew sat around and watched us. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So the second video, Mel decided he didn't want to do a network thing. So HBO picked up the second video we did, Mel Gibson's unauthorized video, Lethal 3 or something, I think it was called. And this one was bigger. I mean, we crashed a jet. There was all kinds of stuff we did. And we kind of tied it into what was available in the movie. Like at one point.
The other one's
nice house, huh?
And then I'm going to roll this in right here. So we need a clear path, no obstructions, no...
I bet I can hit that house from here.
Just so that you can let down the way.
As a matter of fact, Terry, anybody that doesn't have to be in the...
I hope nobody saw that.
That second video got nominated for a Cable Ace Award, which was like unheard of. And that's what set me up to start campaigning to get a Tales from the Crypt. Because Donner and Joel were very happy with what we did, and it really helped exploit the movie. And actually...
You had the right fans.
I beg your pardon?
You had the right fans.
Yeah, exactly. And it, believe it or not, it changed the way the studios exploit movies to this day. It was like, this was the first thing, because it was behind the scenes. It was Mel talking to the camera, all of this shit happening. Very crude, very silly, but it gave you this window into the making of the movie, although we, you know, kind of styled it up a little bit, but it became the talk of the town. Nobody had ever done this before. It was us and Donner giving us the liberty to do it, you know, like we had the president of Warner Brothers, Mark Canton, was in a video with Chevy Chase.
What are you going to do? No, what are you going to do? This is Warner Brothers, man. This is Warner Brothers. I know. Wait. Busy with Mel. What are you doing here?
So again, while I'm hairdressing, all of this is going on. You know, we put on tuxedos and went to the Cable Ace Awards, but we didn't.
Your side, you had a really interesting side hustle here.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that sort of came out of nowhere only because HBO left this camera on the set and we started to figure out what to do with it.
Something out of nothing, literally.
Yeah. I mean, it was so much fun. But so here comes Tales from the Crypt, which you guys obviously know all about. But I start angling, you know, I would ask Donner, he'd say, you know, I'd say, Dick, you think maybe I could do one of these? You know, I'd love to get into the DGA. And he said, go ask Joel. And Joel would say, well, go ask Donner, you know, and with this whole like ask your mom, ask your dad thing.
Right.
And finally a slot opened up, and we had a stunt coordinator who's a dear friend of mine. I don't know if I should mention his name. Maybe I'll get a hit put out on me, but the stunt coordinator that worked with Joel, and his name's Charlie Pacherny, famous stunt family. He finds out that I'm getting a slot to direct Tales. And he's like, no, you're not. I'm getting that slot. You're not getting it. You're just the hairdresser. And I'm the stunt, you know, I'm this big stunt man and everything. And I'm like, dude, you're rich. I'm this little guy. I'm getting the break of my life. And you know, you're cock blocking me here. Are you kidding? You know, he said, fuck it. And he took the slot. And I was devastated. I was like, you know, I thought there it went. This guy who drove a Ferrari and had a house in Hidden Hills and all this comes in and blocks me, you know, literally took it out from under me. And they couldn't do anything because they needed him for second unit and you know, so you know, I'm crushed. And then I go on from Lethal 3 to go do Demolition Man. And with Sylvester Stallone, I was his hairstylist. It's another Joel Silver production. And a slot opens up while I'm on Demolition Man for Tales. And Joel says, the only way you can do this is if Sly signs off on it. You know, you're not going to just leave him high and dry. You're his hairstylist. You're getting paid a fortune to do his hair. And so I'm like, oh, shit. You know, so I go to Sly and my throat's dry. I'm like, oh. Listen, I you know, and I said, I got a slot to get my DGA card to go direct to Tales from the Crypt. And I said, you know, is it okay if I go? You know, are you okay with that? And he's like, no, you got to stay here and brush my hair, you know. And he was kidding. He goes, of course I'm okay. You know, he goes, go do it, you know. And so I left Demolition Man and left Sly with another hairstylist for, I don't know, 10 days or however long. It was a 10-day shoot or something, 5 prep, 5 shoot, and went off and did your guys' show, you know. And you know, by the time I got that opportunity, you know, I had worked with, you know, Taylor Hackford, Catherine Bigelow, Dick Donner, you know, Ridley Scott on commercials, John McTiernan. You know, I had a lot of opportunities to sit there and pay attention. So it felt pretty good, you know, to go directly, you know. So.
And you had a mind for architecture to begin with. And so, as you said, and tinkering with engines and figuring out how things work. So, you know, at the end of the day, directing, I'm sorry, guys, I know you're both members of the DGA and I'm not, but, you know, at its basic level, it's not that hard, really. It's, you know, in TV especially, you know, really the director is a traffic cop. You're the flavor of the week, but really the house flavor is much bigger than you are.
But to defend it a little bit, I mean, Tales from the Crypt wasn't being a traffic cop because it was logical. And everything was different. Every week was a different world.
We were an anthology, so there was no house style to speak of. Exactly. We were quite well. We were the exception to every rule there was.
You absolutely were. I mean, the thing about it is, I look at, I don't think directing is an easy job. I mean, it's easy if you know how, but I mean, you can do over as a master and, you know, a little bit of coverage, whatever. But I think to create that intersection of cinematic mechanics, if you will, and the drama without drawing attention to yourself, but to create these sort of moments is difficult. Like, I had a friend of mine, you know, tell me, he goes, man, he goes, you worry too much, just leave it up to the DP. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You know, the DP's not up all night figuring out the blocking and, you know, when you're going to push in and the ins. I go, the DP's not that guy. You know, that's your job as the director. You know.
You know, Alan suffered terribly with me whenever I directed, because whenever I figured out a shot, I always thought that there was a better shot. So I would beat the shit out of myself trying to figure out, okay, that's not a good shot that I just came up with. There's a better shot. What is it? What is it? And I would just beat my head against the wall, you know. And it was a real painful experience for me.
Yeah,
and it's also you're looking to create that emotionality of those characters and how to build that the best way possible, using whatever you have, meaning the shots, meaning the effects, meaning the lighting, you know, anything else you can think of. And so it isn't an easy task. It only looks like an easy task when it's done and you go, oh wow, that works.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, I mean,
there's craft for sure, and there is a huge difference between actual craftspeople and, you know, traffic cops.
Yeah. I mean, there are shows. You know, my wife and I are watching this show now called Virgin River. It's like this soap set up in the looks like it's up in Canada or something. Lots of trees and cabins and whatnot. And that show is very, like, you know, over medium close. You know, there's no cinematic mechanics at work. You know, really get that immersive experience within the narrative, provided it's warranted. There's a lot of work that goes into that. A lot of work that goes into it. Knowing, you know, how wide to be, when to use a close-up, any number of things. And I always say, like, when I see sometimes new directors, I'll say that's a film school shot, which is something that takes you out of the narrative. It may be really fun to do and to put on your reel for 6 seconds, but to resist that and come up with a dignified, stylized, appropriate shot, and be it during a car chase or, you know, or get the sense of, you know, to try and make the person's hair stand up on the back of their necks or convey fear or whatever it may be. There's definitely technique to that. I kind of pride myself on these days being able to deliver that and not make that the only shot I got the whole day.
Well, let's step back into Oil's Well That Ends Well. You brought a really cinematic eye to your first time sitting in a director's chair. There are some lovely shots. I just rewatched it before we all sat down here. Well, there's a lovely shot where she Priscilla Presley puts a shot glass down on the bar. Wonderful, nice little touches like that.
I have a great story about that shot that I'll share with you.
Go for it.
Love this. I hope you love it. I'm working on a show called Just Cause with Sean Connery. It shoots in Miami. Kate Capshaw's in it. Larry Fishburne, you know, famous artist. A few other names in it, but Kate Capshaw, who's married to Steven Spielberg. So one day I get a call from Kate and she says, look, I need my roots touched up. Can you come to my hotel room and do it for me? And I'm of course, you know, so I get up early, I go to the Eden Rock Hotel where she's staying, and she's in a robe and I'm putting on this goop on her hair in the living room of her hotel suite. And Steven Spielberg walks into the room. Kate had overheard that I got my DGA card and I did a Tales from the Crypt. So Spielberg walks into the room. It's probably 7:30 in the morning. You know, there he is, the guy, you know, Steven Spielberg. And Kate introduced me. Oh, this is Paul, and he just got into the DGA, and I'm putting the goop on her hair with gloves on. I've got this big mess going, And Spielberg's like, really? You know, how did you do that? You know,
Yeah.
oh, I know Joel and Dick, and they let me direct a Tales from the Crypt. And he says, wow, he goes, I'd like to see that sometime. I just happen to have a VHS with me. So I, out of my kit, I said, well, here it is. You know, if you get a second, have a look, you know. So a day or two goes by, and we're shooting in the Eden Rock, and you know, the whole crew's there. And when Spielberg comes onto the set, I mean, it's, you know, you hear the Jaws music, you hear, you know, I mean, it's like there's an essence to this guy. It's huge. And so we're sitting there, I don't know, there's maybe 15 people around. I'm kind of in between setups, and Spielberg comes over, he puts his hand around my shoulder, and he goes, I really enjoyed that. He hands me the tape. He goes, I really enjoyed that. He goes, I love that shot with the shot glass and the lipstick. And everyone's just like, what the fuck is happening right now? And I'm just standing there like my ears are beaming, you know, and you know, that was about it. But it was just that one moment where he actually acknowledged the same shot you brought up. So
it's a lovely shot. She's really, really good in the episode.
Yeah, I had a good time with her.
She's really, her line deliveries are just, they're so fun and funny, and she was so willing just to go balls to the wall. And Nimmer Fro was, he was like looking for his inner Quentin Tarantino, and he seemed to find it. And he was so proud of having Priscilla Presley speak the line,
I don't munch carpet and I don't strap it on.
She says, I'm no lesbian. I don't munch carpet and I don't strap it on. Yeah, he was a great sport, you know. So so I get into the DGA. I have a tape, like a legitimate episode of Tales from the Crypt, which, as we all know,
very legitimate episode. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah, and so then I start trying to get another assignment, you know, and I'm still sort of hairdressing, you know, telling people I'm a director now, and people are like, yeah, just make sure this isn't too long, you know. And so I had been watching this show called Silk Stalkings. It was set in Palm Beach, although they shot it in San Diego. I don't know. Do you know the show? It's a sexy female, a sexy male detective, and Palm Beach crimes, you know, high society stuff, whatever. So I start writing to Stu Siegel, who's the producer of this thing. I maybe wrote him 30 little buck cards. They're like, hey, loved the episode last night. That was a great thing, you know. I kept writing and writing and writing and writing to him. And I'd sure love, if anything ever comes up, I'd sure like to come down and direct an episode. Here's my Tales from the Crypt, you know. And so, I don't know, 6 or 8 months went by, and I get a call, you know, from him. And he says, look, an episode's come up, and if you want, you can come down and do it, you know. And while I'd been watching the show, I noticed it was kind of, you know, very over master, you know, very straightforward, kind of soapy looking. And I'm thinking, man, when I get down there, I am gonna, you know, we're gonna use some stuff here. We're gonna make this thing look more expensive and better, you know. So I've got all these ideas. I happened to get a Stephen Cannell episode, which was the better quality one. It just happened to come my way. So I pack up my Porsche with all my goodies, and I drive to San Diego. I get to the production office, which is this building, like there's no signage or anything. It's just a building on a lot somewhere in San Diego. And I walk in, there's a receptionist at this shitty little desk, no posters, nothing around anywhere. And I said, hi, am I in the right place? You know, Silk Stalks. He said, yeah. I said, I'm Paul. I'm supposed to meet with Stu Siegel. And she says, he's down at the end of the hall. So I'm like, okay. And I'm a little nervous, I'll admit. You know, I just had one episode. I mean, I thought I knew what I was doing. I kind of did. You know. And I walked down to the end of this hall, and at the hall goes straight down, and his office is right here. And at the threshold from the hallway into his office, there's a tape outline of like a body laying on the ground, like you'd see at a crime scene or something. Instead of chalk, it's taped off. And I peek my head into his office, and he's sitting at this desk, and there's 2 Rottweilers, like big ones, on each side of his desk, live dogs. And as I peek in, the dogs are like, and they just sat, he kind of snapped his fingers and the dogs were just there. And so that's the first thing that happens. And then I said, hey, Stu, Paul Abascal, how do you do it? I said, what's that? And I point to the outline. He goes, it's a director. Sit down. And I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting there, and mind you, I've read the script, I've broken it down, I've got all these ideas, and he says, sit down. And I sit there, and he goes, let me tell you how we do the show. He goes, this is a close-up. No, he goes, this is a close-up. I want to see tits and headroom. There's no panning. We don't Dutch. We don't whip pan. We don't push in. We don't do it. And I'm just slowly, all of these ideas are getting just ripped out from under me, and I'm like, sure, no problem, And, I went on to do
You're here to be a traffic cop.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Welcome to traffic school,
Yeah.
So the episode came out fine, although there was one time where this car was speeding out of this gated community, and I wanted to follow it because it breaks through the turnstile, at the guard gate, And I said, we'll just whip through here with the car, The whole crew said, we can't whip pan. I said, we're not whip panning. We're following the car. Anyway, I made him do it. I never heard about it, but it was that was my big embellishment for the show.
Did you ever get hired back?
I never got hired back.
That's probably why.
Yeah, probably. But God bless him. He gave me an episode. Now I have two things to show. So I got a thing in Cabo San Lucas called Land's End with Fred Dreyer and Tim Thomerson. Tim Thomerson put me up for that. I had met him at a dinner party, and he's a very, very nice man, and he was working on that show. He put my name up, and I got 3 episodes of that, which was amazing, shooting in Cabo, and so then now I had 5 things to show, and then I started getting some work up in Canada on some action shows up there, like Viper and the Sentinel, and then I was peppering that with America's Most Wanted, which was another kind of amazing thing to work on. You would get a case. The way the show works is it's sort of a last-ditch effort to catch a criminal. So you'd get a case of what happened, whether it was a kidnapping, a murder, or whatever. They give you the case, which was sort of summarized in script form, and you'd go to whatever city it happened in, and you could stage the action any way you wanted. And and you had 2 or 3 cameras and cranes if you needed them and stuff like that. And they were 3 to 4 day shoots, and it was incredibly fun. So I learned how to tape up people with duct tape and tie them and film these things. And then you'd go to Washington, where their main headquarters were, and you'd edit, score, do everything, and then submit the episode when you were done. And that really honed my skills, because there were all different kinds of scenarios that you were shooting,
Really, this was the beginning of the reenactment business.
Yes.
And it has taken over. I mean, it's a very significant piece of the documentaries. Even news divisions will use this technique to bring a story to life.
Yes. And it's super fun, because it's nobody's telling you how to do it. You get there and you say, okay, so you put on your creative hat and you go to town. And most of the people on the crew really didn't have much experience, so they would be just fascinated with what we were doing, and then that was some really fun stuff. It was kind of
I'm sure.
It's kind of like doing a music video, but you had a beginning, middle, and end, and there was also some drama, and you were helping catch criminals. So I think I was personally responsible, because of my episodes. I think I caught 4 seriously bad guys, because the public had seen the episodes and said, hey, that motherfucker works at the coffee shop, and they go. I got a call out of the blue again, this time from Mel, and he said, hey, I need a favor. His company had bought a script that I had been developing with these two writers. And we were developing it at Icon, which was his company. At the time, he was based at Warner Brothers. And it was called The Whole Megillah. And it was kind of like a movie, kind of like The Sting. It was really, it was pretty cool. And we were working on it. And he had just finished doing Payback and was doing Lethal 4. And at that time, I had said, I'm not hairdressing anymore. I put the brush down. And so I was developing this at Icon, and they just finished Payback, and they had shown it to test audiences and Paramount and Warner Brothers because it was a co-production, and it didn't test well. It was not working. And
Brian Helgeland directed it.
Brian Helgeland directed, who was a friend of mine who I knew from Lethal Weapon and from Assassins.
Sure.
Because I worked on those as a hairdresser.
Brian did Tales from the Crypt, so
yeah. He's a great guy. So anyway, so I get a call from Mel and says, "Look, this movie ain't working. I'm busy on Lethal 4. Would you come in?" Terry Hayes, who wrote Dead Calm and some other great scripts, he's an Australian writer. Terry Hayes has written some new material that we're going to insert into the movie, and would you come in and direct this? And I'm like, yeah, of course, So the movie was in trouble. Paramount and Warner were not happy with it. Brian Helgeland decided he didn't want to make any changes on the movie and walked off. And so insert Paul Abascal, so I get in there and storyboard everything. And basically what we're doing is we're inserting a whole storyline within the movie. Like Chris Christopherson wasn't originally in the movie. The whole thing, the ticking clock with the bomb under the bed and Mel getting his toes smashed and all of this stuff didn't exist. So Terry had written this thing to insert into the movie. It was about 30 minutes worth of material. And so they handed me the film and the new pages, and I went to work, So it was one of those situations where, like, I am either going to fuck myself here, or this is going to work, So it was about, I think, 13 days we shot, and I storyboarded everything. I just went in there, didn't make any excuses for anything I was doing.
The stuff where his toe gets smashed is fucking brutal.
It is.
It's really hard to watch.
It's hard. And I think actually on the reel, I backed off of it a little bit. It was even more gruesome because you never see his toe get hit. You only see him react.
But theater of the mind,
Yeah. So we, everyone's like, "Oh, Paul's going to fix it." Don't get near me. I don't have anything to do with this. People are distancing themselves from the movie because it could potentially be a disaster, right? So anyway, so we shoot everything. I go to the editing room. I'm working with the editor and we're cutting it. I think we changed the score. No, we didn't change the score. We had Chris Borsman, I think, or Chris
Borsman.
Boardman, yeah.
Yeah.
He did some of the stuff, the fixes and whatnot. And we showed it we had this big screening of it for Sherry Lansing and Lorenzo Di Bonaventura, Jeff Berg, all of these major players come and see what Paul has done to the movie, And I'm sitting there and they show the movie and it worked, really well, thank God. And the lights come on and everyone stands up and they're clapping and I'm like, it was an amazing moment, and actually got a kiss from Sherry Lansing. So that was a huge deal for me. So now I have a feature, partial feature on my reel, on my resume. And it was interesting because it came down, I had done enough of the movie to warrant a credit on the poster. Cause I'd shot like a minute and a half over what would have not gotten me credit, and I decided not to take credit on it because it sort of would have thrown things off. I did it out of respect to Brian, and I just thought it was the right thing to do. I still get residuals on the movie, but I just didn't take a credit, which sometimes I regret not doing. But but at the time it seemed like the right thing. Like it would have been greedy to take it, because I just think it would have, whenever the movie was talked about then, it would have been like, well, who's this other director? Like what happened, you know? So it was kind of, it was known within the business, but you know, the public didn't really know, you know.
But the people who needed to know knew.
Yeah.
That's really, at the end of the day, that's what's most important.
Yeah. And I mean, again, like I had to, there was arbitration at the DGA, and they said, like, look, you know, you've done too much of this movie not to be credited, and it's not second unit. So what do you want to do? You know, because you're entitled to a credit on the film. And I just, like I said,
I think you did something not a single member of the WGA has ever done. ever.
Well, they did tell me I would still get the residuals, which, I mean,
we don't care.
This is 1998. I still get checks for the movie. Like, you know, they're not paying for a Ferrari, but they're, you know, they still trickle in.
You did a bunch of episodes of a really good series called American Genius.
Yes.
Tesla v. Edison and Space Race, and they're both
Mr. Nikola Tesla.
A pleasure. Generators, 2,250 volts each, producing 37,000 kilowatts. Here, the current is increased to 22,000 volts for travel.
How far?
Albany, New York City, Chicago. This will revolutionize the industry as we know it.
You do have an absolute knack for merging these two, you know, the information and the expert and the world in which the expert is actually living.
That was an amazing assignment. There was an 8-episode miniseries. I did 4, and a colleague of mine did the other 4, and we would shoot. It was a very truncated shooting schedule, so we would shoot like 3 different episodes on the same day. Like you'd shoot 1968 in the space race, and then you'd shoot, 1856 early Colt Smith and Wesson. Change those extras, and now you're in 1940s for the space race episode. So and then the other guy would be shooting simultaneously. He would be doing the same thing. So the production designer and the wardrobe people on that show were like next level amazing. Like turn these sets around, you know, on the same day, you know, and hey, that guy was in the other one. I need give me the other extra, you know, put him over here. And it was this like sleight of hand that ended up working out pretty great. I had a lot of fun on that, and I learned a lot too. Because I didn't know the Steve Jobs. Who's the other guy, the richest man in the world? Bill
Gates.
Bill Gates. I did the Bill Gates Steve Jobs story, and I didn't know that story. How Bill Gates saves Apple, and Apple, you know, because Apple was going bankrupt, and they were, and so Gates had to save Apple because he had the monopoly, and by saving Apple, it got the government off his back for having the monopoly on the software. It's a very interesting story, you know. But again, the Tesla story was fascinating to learn about and to direct. And we got this. I don't know if you saw that the actor that plays Tesla looks exactly like him, and he was a wonderful actor. So that was really, really fun. I do want to tell you a great Die Hard story. So I was a hairstylist on Die Hard, and there's a famous caterer in the business named Tony Karam. You've probably heard of him. He's like the kind of the pinnacle of catering, and he would always work on Joel's movies. Very nice guy. He's from Yugoslavia, I think. And so we're set up at the Nakatomi building, which is just right off the Fox lot there on Avenue of the Stars, where the whole thing takes place. And Tony, there was this Latino guy that was coming around asking for work. You know, he had nothing to do with the movie. He was just a guy that kind of came up to the set. And Tony was nice enough to give him a job, peeling potatoes and helping out catering, because we were shooting almost all nights. So the kid comes in, you know, nobody really knows that Tony's hired him or anything. And till one night he comes in and he's drunk, like pretty fucked up. And so Tony is, you know, oh, you can't be here, and he fires the guy. And so, you know, he tells him get off the property. Before the guy leaves, he goes into the prop truck and steals a plastic machine gun. Doesn't work, it's just plastic. Now we're on Avenue of the Stars, Century City, in the Century Plaza Hotel. It just so happened that once this guy's leaving, he's walking down Avenue of the Stars with a machine gun in his hand. The president of the United States is staying at the hotel that night. And he comes cruising down Avenue of the Stars, heading toward the hotel with this plastic machine gun.
Oh.
And I'm going to tell you, every manhole cover pops up, and you've never seen Secret Service like this. I mean, it was like, they were everywhere. And they got this guy, and they bring him back to the set. They've got him roped and handcuffed, and he's laying across the back seat of one of these, you know, narc cars, you know, all blacked out, whatever. And I mean, this guy didn't know what hit him, you know, when these guys came out of the woodwork. And so he's laying in the car, and the guy goes to undo his feet, and he kicks one of the Secret Service guys in the face. Like he's just laying, his head's on one side of the car, his feet on the other, and he kicks one of these guys. And I'm standing like a few feet away, and I'm like, oh shit, you know. And these guys, they Secret Serviced him right then and there, and they handcuffed him and taped him up and took him away. I never know what happened to him, but that
I bet he doesn't know either.
Yeah, that was an exceptionally colorful evening on that set.
You've had an amazing journey.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah,
an amazing journey. I mean, just it boggles my mind that you are not further. I don't know why people aren't beating a path to your door. You're an amazingly skilled shooter.
I'll be honest with you. Where I fucked up, or what never came to fruition, was finding that agent that believed in me. You know, like I ended up doing another studio film called Paparazzi.
All right.
You know, which did pretty well. I mean, all things, was like a just shy of $7 million studio film that 20th Century Fox released in the theaters. And after that film, I got a call from Disney they brought me in, and they wanted to give me that movie 8 Below, which is the dog sled movie with Paul Walker.
Yeah.
And I was stupid enough to turn it down. I thought, now that I've done another studio film, I can kind of have my pick of the litter, whatever. And that was definitely not the case. And I remember saying, you know, I don't want to work with dogs, and you know, and I had heard that was such a nightmare and everything. And I foolishly turned that movie down, you know. And I'm still regretting it, but you know, I'm writing, I'm you know, pounding away, and I get a call from my commercial agent, who I was convinced thought I was dead, out of the blue. And he says, he goes, I got something for you. He goes, the FBI has decided to create a series, an in-house series like CSI, for their sheriffs, agents, investigators, and police officers on cybercrime. So they want to know how to proceed, like when you're confiscating a computer, what do you do? What don't you do? Do you put on airplane mode, and do you unplug it? Blah, 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 all of these things. So they gave me, it was supposed to be 8 episodes. Now, mind you, I got hired on a commercial contract, which is like almost $10,000 a day. And so I get hired on this thing to prep, write, and shoot the first 4 episodes on cybercrime, identity theft, cyberbullying, and online fraud. So they give me these case studies. I write the scripts, getting paid for those, plus directing and all that. And we shoot 4 episodes in Pittsburgh. Goes great. And James Comey does the intro for this, for the department. Like, they film him. I didn't film him, but somebody else filmed him talking to the camera and saying, this is for you guys, and we hope you enjoy it. This is a different approach. Instead of doing a PowerPoint, we thought this might be more interesting, and it would seep in better, So you're actually seeing how this stuff works. So he does the intro, we tag it on to the front of the thing, and Trump fires James Comey. And since this was part of James Comey's brainchild, the series goes out the window. And I'm out. I had 4 more episodes to shoot at almost 10 grand a day, and they were 8-day shoots, So thank you, Donald Trump.
I will be the first to say it. That Donald Trump's a motherfucker.
I couldn't believe it.
But you're not, Paul, and that is most important. And you're not, Gil, and I don't think I am. But thank you so much for sitting in with us today, Paul. Wow,
yeah, what a pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful to reconnect, Paul, after a long time.
Yeah, Gil, I love you, man. You were so good to me on Tales, man. I'll never forget it. I still have that you actually handed me. I still have my
hoverboard
marker.
Yeah.
It means a lot to me. Yeah. Well, you guys are great guys, man, and I hope something comes up and we can work together.
Well, hey, those feelings are very, very mutual, and hey, thank you again, Paul, and thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.